What people really want to know is what's going on in the real estate 2024 spring market. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the same old things: supply, demand, and inventory. And ultimately, for the last year, we've seen far less houses traded on market just because of the increase in rates, right? Rewind to COVID when the market was crazy, we had nothing but houses on the market, right? Things were turning over so quickly. People were gobbling up these great interest rates because there was an advantage from an affordability standpoint, right? So you had access to inventory. It went quick. So I'm not saying there was a lot of inventory, but you had access and lots of turnover. And then you also had huge demand from buyers because the buyer pool was bigger because affordability was better. So this last year, obviously, we kind of saw the reverse of that, right? You have now sellers that are sitting on these beautiful 3% interest rates. So, what seller wants to trade their 3% interest rate for something that starts with an 8? Eek. No one wants to do that. And so they're just sitting on the sidelines waiting ultimately. They're like, my payment is relatively cheap. I can't buy anything this good for this price, and I'm just going to hang out. They've got zero motivation to do anything with it. Then you've got buyers. Flip side of this is as these rates continue to climb, less and less buyers were even able to enter the market. And I think an interesting thing happened though with that. Yes, demand left from the sense of accessibility to financing, but it also forced buyers to one, get more creative, and then secondarily, buyers became more motivated. I cannot tell you how many buyers we have run into in the last year in particular that they are dying to get back in the market. They saw this crazy appreciation that we had over the last few years, and they bet you are not going to miss the next boat, so to speak. And so I think that we're going to see something really interesting begin to happen coming into the spring ultimately.
Yeah, and when you think about it, as interest rates drop, more buyers are going to be entering the market. So there's going to be a higher demand, and that's going to push these price points up. So now all these sellers that are sitting on the sideline currently, now their house is increasing in equity. So when they go to sell that property, they can now roll over that cash into the next house. And although they are going to see probably a higher interest rate than that cushy 3%, it's still going to be more manageable for them. They're going to have a lower loan balance, but they have just all the reasons in the world to wait for those interest rates to come down because otherwise, there's no reason to jump into this market.
Right. And we saw just at the tail end of 2023, rates came down just a little bit, right? And since that happened, the beginning of this year, we have seen an insane change in buyer behavior, in my opinion. The amount of people that are entering back in the market and the sellers that are become more interested in the market once again. Honestly, it surprised me with that little of a shift, how much activity we're seeing locally. I can only imagine as these rates continue to fall, what we're really going to see. And I think the real question here, the real item to track is going to be how fast these rates come down. Because if the rates come down fast enough, right, we could find ourselves very quickly in something called a reverse market crash, where today that $900,000 house, almost overnight, we're looking at 1.3. So
And another difficult thing to calculate is how many sellers that are sitting on the sideline are genuinely going to sell that property. Because if you have such an incredible interest rate, they may be thinking, I might want to rent this property out. I don't want to let go of that because that's such a huge asset that I may never see that interest rate again, at least in the near future.
no, excellent point. And quite honestly, that is only adding to the inventory shortage problem that we've been having for the last few decades at this point. So, no, interesting market ahead. I'm very excited for it. And I think that if your cards are played right, we're going to end up with quite a few clients that are winning at the end of this one. So,
Absolutely.